Bosses at 6 water companies have been banned from getting bonuses under new rules which come into force today.
Environment Secretary Steve Reid joins us now. Good to have you with us this morning. Everyone's going to be pleased, and I'm sure you'll be delighted to tell us that this ban comes into force today, that the government announced was going to put into place when it came to power. The trouble is that it's great that the leaders of companies that are polluting our waters and failing to manage things well, so our prices go up for our basic waters. It's great that they're no longer going to get bonuses, but their basic salaries are eye-wateringly high, and as yet, they've still not been brought to book. People want to see convictions and prison sentences.
Well, good morning, Kate, from a slightly blustery beach in Portsmouth. You can see the sea behind me. There's a sign about a couple of metres away that tells people not to go in the water because it's so polluted. So that's the scale of the problem that we are dealing with. Now, over the last decade, water company bosses who were responsible for that pollution paid themselves over £100 million in bonuses. Now, that offends against the great British public's sense of fair play. So the era of profiting from pollution is now over. And from today, 6 of those companies have been banned from paying bonuses because they breached the Category 1 metric, the most serious type of pollution offence. They will not be rewarded because of what they've done. But as you're saying, just banning bonuses on its own isn't enough. We know that we need to be doing more as well. So we're doing much more enforcement. We've changed the law so that there can be up to 2 years in prison for water bosses who are responsible for that kind of pollution. We've got 81 criminal investigations launched now into what's happening in the water companies. That is a record as well. But at the same time, we've also attracted over £100 billion worth of private sector investment. That is the biggest investment in our water sector's history, and it will go to fixing those pipes to stop, finally, the flow of sewage into the seas like the one behind me and rivers and lakes up and down the country.
Look, you seem to have your own water problem this morning, and we thank you absolutely for braving it out for us, because a lot of people are very keen to hear what you had to say. You listed all of that, which is great, but as you say, 81 investigations. What power and teeth do you have to empower Ofwat to actually deliver so that we can swim in those seas we see behind you? We can drink our water without having to pay a fortune for it from what are effectively monopolies.
Well, absolutely right. So earlier this year, we passed a new law called the Water Special Measures Act, which gives the regulator more teeth. So those potential prison sentences for water bosses for certain types of offences, and people want to see that. But we've also given the regulator more resources. So the previous government cut the regulator's resources in half. And if they don't have the people and they don't have the money, they can't carry out the investigations, and the water companies were able to get away with what they were doing. So we've increased funding for those resources by 9% in the budget last year, but we've also introduced the polluter pays principle. This is very, very much common sense, because what we're doing is, where there is a successful prosecution of a water company, they will pay back the cost of that prosecution, and then that money will be used to fund further investigations, potentially leading to
that Special Measures Act, which I've read, I've taken a keen interest in, is without question made some advances. But I want to go back to basics. You're standing out there in the rain. You make just shy of 160,000 a year. The Prime Minister makes about 5,000 more than you. But just to be clear, why could you not cap the amount that the heads of water companies make as their base salary? That's what Kate was asking you. Just brace yourself in the water. Do you think that Chris Weston is worth £850 a year, £850,000 a year before bonuses, or do you think Liv Garfield's worth £584,000? That's in some instances 7 times more than you make. Why should they be paid, well, more than you? That salary of yours, by the way, also includes your job as an MP.
You have to pay a rate that will attract the people in that you need to run the sector, but I've got somebody called Sir John Cunliffe, the former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the problem is people think these people aren't doing a good job. The pollution is still going on. So the argument of attracting good people to the
that's
sector...
that's why I'm taking the action I'm taking today. So I've got... It's why I'm taking the action I'm taking today, banning bonuses. That's what we said we'd do before the election, that's what we've done. But I've got an independent review going into the water sector that is also looking at remuneration. So it may be that there are further steps that we can take subsequent to that. I'm due that report on my desk next month, but this is a very big step today. People wanted to see those bonuses stopped because they felt it was unfair that water bosses are getting multi-million-pound bonuses for overseeing pollution.
Secretary, this is, I understand it's difficult. Listen, you would consider the point that's being made, right? You say you've got to attract good people with, I think, £840,000 a year. Presumably you want the best people running the environment department, which you run. You get paid, in some instances, some water companies, about 10 times less. Are you not as good as they are?
Well, we've brought in the bonuses ban today. I think that's an important thing, but we've got a three-stage approach to resetting this sector. Enforcement, and you've got those 81 investigations underway. Investment, and we brought in £104 billion of private sector investment to stop the sewage. But modernisation too, we're resetting the rules, giving them the teeth they need so the problems that led to this problem with sewage can never happen again in the future.
Look, I think what you're saying is you'll consider capping the pay. Look, just one question. You know, this is a monopoly. Everybody knows it. You can't change your water company. Back in 2020, Keir Starmer effectively pledged that he was going to bring it back into common ownership. That disappeared. And the reason for that, you've made clear, as has the Prime Minister, is it would cost too much to bring it back into public ownership. Help me out. How much would it actually cost?
Well, we have to do what works, to be honest. I mean, the cost is one factor. It would cost over £100 billion to buy out the current owners, and that would mean taking money off the public out of their taxation and giving it to the bosses of the water companies that have overseen this failure in the first place. But secondly, if we were to look at nationalisation, it would take years to unpick the current model of ownership, and during that time there would be no investment and water pollution would get worse and not better. But also, you only have to look to Scotland where they have a nationalised water company. But this is quite an important point, if I may. Yeah. If I may just make this point, because it's very important. But in Scotland, the water company is nationalised, and they have just the same problems with pollution, so it doesn't sort it out. So what I'm trying to do is the thing that will actually work.
The figure you're talking about, what you want is more government regulation and people to be accountable for sewage going into our shared waterway. 400,000 leaks in 1 year. It affects everybody. That figure that you've just given, the £100 million, comes from the Social Market Foundation, £100 billion. That was a figure that was provided by a foundation that was funded by the water companies. There's another figure for you.
No, I had my own officials in the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs conduct their own review of what it would cost, and it is over £100 billion. Okay. I'm absolutely confident those are independent figures that we can rely on. And I'm not going to take £100 billion out of the NHS to give it to the people that own the water companies that cause the pollution. I'm going to take steps that will resolve the problem with pollution. That is giving the regulator the teeth they need to crack down on the law breaking, but also attracting in that £104 billion of private sector investment so we can fix the broken sewage pipes and stop the sewage flowing into our waterways.
Well, everybody would be very pleased. We can sense your commitment, and thank you for putting up with the weather to get your message across so effectively this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Secretary of State.